The Hard Rock Café is an amazing story. It started out as a single trend restaurant in London in the 1970s and has since evolved into an international brand consisting of hotels, casinos, and live music venues. How often can you say that about something I'm talking about over 200 locations, spread across 75 countries on every continent except Antarctica? And you can't really blame them for avoiding Antarctica. According to Forbes, of $5.9 billion in annual sales just qualifies them to be on the list of America's 100 largest private companies. Let me know if you agree with this, but I think Hard Rock provides an experience that tends to resonate with their customers, an experience that I would say is hard to compare to anything else, which probably helps explain why so many people have been requesting that I make this video talking about their unusual history and trying to explain why they have been such a standout success over the past 50 plus years. Well, I've put together a list of what I believe to be the biggest reasons behind that standout success, starting with maybe the most obvious one, the fact that they have stood out. Yeah, that initial restaurant was started by Peter Morton and Isaac Tigret, who in 1971 were both 22-year-olds from wealthy American families who met each other when they happened to be living in London while they were there. They had a hard time finding any restaurants that sold hamburgers or offered anything even similar to that classic American dining experience. Remember, this was all the way back when McDonald's was still a few months away from opening their first European location and still a few years away from their first London location. So instantly the Hard Rock Café stood out from all of the other restaurants in London at the time when they started selling hamburgers and other American-style foods. Ironically, I want to point out that Tigret became a vegetarian shortly after opening it, and also that original restaurant stood out because it had a casual environment right in the middle of a very fancy area. The Mayfair district in London was known almost exclusively as having formal hotels and restaurants and just being a very high-end area. In fact, that Hard Rock Café was located on a former Rolls-Royce dealership, and the owner of it had so little confidence in the restaurant that he was only willing to offer a 6-month lease. But the fact that the restaurant stood out so much from its surroundings clearly ended up working to its advantage. It quickly became a trendy place to hang out that was frequented by various celebrities, so the Hard Rock was different from the very beginning. And as I go through my list, you'll see more ways that they have stood out over the years, but right now I want to move on to the next reason and talk more about those celebrities. Some of the biggest celebrities of the time would hang out at that place, specifically rock musicians, members of Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, to name a few. And when Led Zeppelin starts hanging out at your restaurant, it is automatically cool. Carole King made a popular song about it. Paul McCartney and Wings delivered their first ever live performance there in 1973, so you can see that there was just so much free publicity happening whenever anyone famous would do anything there. It was reported in the news by the end of the decade. Co-founders Morton and Tigret were no longer getting along very well. I don't want to dive deep into the relationship, but it seems like Morton was more of a businessman concerned with money and profits, while Tigret was more of a creative person with different concerns. Either way, they were having a hard time getting along. They had different aspirations for the business and for their own futures. So Tigret reportedly paid more than $800,000 for his share of the restaurant. And then there was a lawsuit concerning who would get the rights to the famous Hard Rock name when expanding the concept into the United States. After a year-long legal battle, it was agreed that they would split the rights. Morton would be able to open Hard Rocks in the West, while Tigret could do it in the East, and most of these new American locations early on had heavy involvement from celebrities that was an important part of their customer base. So they opened in areas with a high concentration of celebrities and were financially backed by celebrities. in 1982, Morton opened the first American Hard Rock in Los Angeles with investments from Steven Spielberg and Willie Nelson, among others. Then, 2 years later, Tiger opened the second US Hard Rock in New York City with investments from Dan Aykroyd and Hugh Brenner. Among others, it was an unusual setup right where this American-themed restaurant from London was finally opening locations in America that were under the control of two separate companies with feuding owners. That is a lot to keep straight. So, I'm going to go back to my list and say another major reason behind the success of Hard Rock is the music theme. Of course, it's amazing. I've gotten this far into the video without mentioning the fact that Hard Rock Café is in fact a themed restaurant, arguably the most successful themed restaurant of all time. Please let me know if you can think of another one that has done better. I could honestly spend the rest of the video talking about this, but to keep it short, the music theme stems from the fact that that original location attracted so many musicians. Specifically, Eric Clapton, legend, has it that he gave them one of his guitars for them to hang on the wall above the area where he usually sat. I guess it was meant as a way to mark his spot. Shortly after this is funny, Pete Townsend from a popular band called The Who one of his guitars with a note attached saying, "Mine's as good as his." That was the start of a memorabilia collection that has since grown to an estimated 86,000 pieces obtained mostly through donations and auctions. It includes instruments, clothing, photographs, even vehicles, I believe it, when they say that it is the largest and most valuable collection of music memorabilia in the world. If you go to one of their locations, you might see some of the stuff, and you have to admit that is really cool. Actually seeing John Lennon's glasses in person, or Michael Jackson's jacket from that iconic Beat It music video. Another one that stands out would be in 2015, they obtained this gold leaf piano that used to be owned by Elvis Presley as their 80,000 piece. It's also cool and hard. Rock has also opened live concert venues and hosted live performances inside many of the locations to a point where today they say that they host 35,000 live performances annually throughout the world. In the 1990s, a Hard Rock's popularity even helped spark the creation of a few other themed restaurants, probably the most notable one being Planet Hollywood. I don't want to get too sidetracked with that one right now. Let me know if I should make a dedicated video, but it was essentially a movie-themed restaurant, also with a strong celebrity backing that Morton filed a lawsuit against, essentially claiming that they had copied his idea Planet Hollywood, started in 1991 but filed for bankruptcy before the end of the decade. So not nearly as strong or as long-lasting of a brand. Hard Rock has been one of the most effective companies when it comes to branding. In fact, that is the next reason. On my list, Hard Rock claims to maintain over 80% favorable global brand recognition, meaning most of the people watching this, no matter where you are from, already have some degree of familiarity with them. Even if you have never been there, you have likely seen someone wearing their merchandise. I would bet that a fair amount of viewers even own one of these shirts that feature that iconic logo that has been a popular shirt for some time now. The logo itself was designed by Alan Aldridge, who was a popular artist that was fittingly known for working with popular musicians. I guess in the 1970s, Hard Rock was sponsoring a soccer team. They printed up a bunch of shirts with the logo on them for the players to wear. They had printed up too many of them, so they started giving them away to customers, and there was such a positive response that they just kept printing more of them. It has been a great way to get the brand out there that has been complemented by other efforts, like in 2016 when they paid $250 million for the 18-year naming rights on the stadium where the Miami Dolphins play that is now called Hard Rock Stadium, or in 2021 is another great example when they made a 5-year deal with soccer player Lionel Messi to be an ambassador for the brand. The final reason on my list behind their success is hotels. and casinos, because that is where the company has been headed. In 1988, Tigret sold his hard rock company, and then 8 years later, Morton sold his hard rock company in a deal that joined the two separate hard rock companies back together under the control of a British company called the Rank Organization. I know, it's complicated and it doesn't exactly get much simpler from there. See, it was under Rank's ownership that the Hard Rock formed a partnership with the Seminole tribe of Florida to open two separate hotels and casinos in the state that to do really well. So in 2007, the Seminole tribe of Florida purchased all of Hard Rock for almost $1 billion, the biggest purchase ever by Native American tribe. The tribe was already making most of their money through gambling, so this was a promising way to expand those operations ever since hotels and casinos have been their fastest growing segments. There are now dozens of them around the world, though I do want to make sure I make the distinction that the first ever Hard Rock hotel in casino, the famous one that opened in Las Vegas in 1995, has been separately owned outside of the rest of the company. Yeah, I'm telling you, the ownership of Hard Rock can be tricky to follow, but that hotel was closed down in early 2020 and reopened about a year later under the Virgin Hotels name. Meanwhile, the main Hard Rock company that I've been talking about spent over $1 billion to buy the Mirage from MGM in 2022 and has plans to transform it into a Hard Rock hotel and casino that will be shaped like a massive guitar, likely resembling a much bigger version of the one that they opened in Florida in 2019. So that's probably going to be pretty amazing. And when you look back at the list, it is very representative of why the company has been so successful. It fits into most of these categories, so lots of exciting stuff happening here that I'm going to continue to pay attention to. Let me know in the comments, how do you feel about Hard Rock Cafe and casinos and hotels and everything else? Personally, I would say it is an interesting story with a lot to respect about it, and I've been excited to talk about it. It's a cool, unique concept with so many different aspects throughout the revolution that you don't quite see anywhere else now. It has been argued that Hard Rock has drifted pretty far from where they started. Instead of being a charming, trendy restaurant, it has turned into an overpriced commercial tourist destination. Let me know where you come down on that opinion. And finally, do you agree with my list? Or in your experience, is there something that should be added or taken away from it? And any other thoughts you have about Hard Rock or anything else in this video, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear. Thank you for watching.